Hi everyone, it's Cass. Welcome back to my channel, What Cass Read. Yes, I'm finally back in a filming space, but we are in bike shorts because we're at home today, so we don't need to wear actual work pants. I'm here today to film part 1 of my April wrap-up. If you haven't seen the video that I posted last week, it was called Why I'm Mood Reading for 1 Year. I explained that I originally tried to film this video. This is actually like a part 2 filming excursion. Like, this is the second time around. The first time I tried filming this, it went way too long because I read 17 total books in the month of April. And I just couldn't like get my thoughts together. I couldn't get the filming in like one kind of concise little, I just couldn't do it. So I was like, you know what? We're just going to split it. And if I continue reading as many books as I have been reading, I'm just going to continuously do a mid-month wrap-up moving forward. So right now, this is going to be April wrap-up part 1, and then you can stay tuned because then I hope to film immediately after this April wrap-up 2, and then I'll post that later this week. So I have my reading journal here. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 books that I read for the first half of April. These are all books that I read prior to April 15th. And there were a good number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those 11 were on ebook. I read 2 audiobooks, it looks like, and then the remaining 3 were all physical copies. So that was a pretty sweeping, beginning of the month for ebooks. It'll be interesting when you see my second half of the month because that completely changed around. But let's get to it. And this month, half of the month, I was still kind of like all over the place with the books that I was reading. I was still heavily influenced by romantic suspense. That's kind of where I left off at the end of March. But I really wanted to pick up on more of my fantasy books that have been hanging out on my TBR for a long time. So that's what brings us to book number 1. So this is Shadows of Self, written by Brandon Sanderson. This is book number 2 of the Mistborn Era 2 trilogy. And in this part of the trilogy, we're still following our 2 main Mistborn characters, Wax and Wayne. And then we were introduced to several new characters in this installment as well. Mistborn Era 2, this is a brand new steampunk Scadrial. And Elendel has completely changed because this takes place several hundred years after the events of Mistborn Era 1. So we're coming in with all of the knowledge. Everybody has heard of the legends of Vin. They've heard of the legends of what Kanja are. They know what Mist Wraiths are now. And so the characters in here are operating on all of that knowledge, but so are our villains, which makes it really, really exciting. The main plot that you would find in this second installment is Waxilium, Wax, our main character. He used to be a lawman who practiced out in the roughs, and then due to family circumstances, he has to come back and claim his seat as the head of this like major political and financial house in Elendel. And as I was reading this, I was like, he is totally Bruce Wayne. Think about it. He goes off, becomes one person to the Gotham City, like on the front half and then on the back half, right? He's Batman. So this is very, very similar in the sense that like book number 1, he was kind of operating like a little bit more secretive. Now in book number 2, he's been a little bit more accepted. So it's almost like he blew his own cover, basically, but he's able to now practice a little bit more out in the open and catch bad guys out in the open. Well, the carrying on from book number 1, we're still following this like mysterious group called the Set, and their main goal is to breed mist users, which is completely sinister, completely out of left field. And so I think the lightheartedness of this book and this series sometimes gets talked about a lot more, but really the heart of the conflict is this really gross underlying like eugenics kind of plot line. So that's what we're really following in book number 2. I enjoyed it way more. I ended up giving this one a 5 out of 5 stars. Like book number 1 in this trilogy, I was just starting to get to know the characters. And I think now that I've had time spent with them, I was able to enjoy them a lot more. I also did change and listen to this on audiobook, and I think that also contributed greatly to my enjoyment as well. I just, for some reason, audiobooks and I have like really been jiving. So that was book number 1, gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Book number 2 of the month of April. This is Falling Embers, written by Catherine Cowles, and this is book number 2 of the Tattered and Torn series. So this was one of the like continuing books that I had been reading from March. This is the main romantic suspense series that I decided I really enjoyed, and I wanted to explore more of this series. As a matter of fact, book number 1 in this series, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. This book, I ended up giving 2 out of 5 stars, which comes as big of a shock to me as it did when I first read it, and how much I really enjoyed the first book. So I'll get into it, and I'll get into why. Because I still have not given up on this series. I just want you to know that this one, for me, wasn't the best installment, and this wasn't the follow-up to the first book that I was really hoping for. So book number 2... Actually, let's talk about book number 1 for just a second. The setup for this whole series. We are in this town and this community in the mountains called Wolf Gap. And in, small town. And just on the outside of Wolf Gap, there is this prepper community. Basically live off grid. They're basically on the fringe of society. Well, our main heroine in book number 1, her family is a part of that prepper community, but her father is actually much more on the extreme, and he's got very intense religious convictions. So he kidnaps a young lady because she is not living in this righteous path, and by him kidnapping her and bringing her into the fold, he's going to teach her how to live a life of righteousness. Well, our main heroine in book number 1, she's 11 at the time. She actually saddles up her horse, rides through the mountains in the dark by herself, and goes to the police station and turns her father in. And so that's what the conflict, the whole suspense conflict, is centered around in this whole series. Book number 1, we follow our main heroine, and the hero is a member of that family. He's the brother of the girl who was kidnapped. So there's a lot of internal tension. Now that brings us to book number 2. So book number 2, we are still following the family of this young girl who was kidnapped. She has since been found and returned to her family, and there's a lot of internal family conflict surrounding their feelings about when their sister was kidnapped. And our main heroine in here, she is the youngest sibling, and so when she was growing up, she is now growing up in a world where her sister has been kidnapped, and her parents have tightened the reins on how they are raising her, but basically giving her sister the freedom to overcome her trauma in her own way and in her own space. And there's very much a discrepancy between how each sibling is treated. So that's our main female character. What is her? Hadley. Hadley is the main heroine. And so she is the one who has to deal with so much overbearingness from her parents, and that is her main internal conflict. Then, of course, this romance comes about with brother's best friend. So older brother from book number 1, his best friend is our hero. Who is that? Calder. Now, Calder is a sexy firefighter, so I should have enjoyed his aspect. As a matter of fact, I don't dislike either of these characters. Hadley is a young girl, grew up with a big crush on Calder because brother's best friend. She is an EMT, and then Calder is a firefighter in the department. So they work very closely together. Hadley, her way of dealing with the trauma that the family has gone through, she's kind of become this daredevil in secret. And her main conflict is just not as compelling to me as book number 1 was. And the way that they repeated the same argument over and over and over again with their mom, you had me, like, I was out. I was done. Because I would say 60% of this book is them having the same argument with their mom. And even Calder, like, kind of jumps into the argument as well, because he grew up alongside this family and he knows exactly what happened. And so he's kind of grown up with this same tension by being so close to this family. That was really, really bothersome to me, that just, like, so much of this book, like, didn't have to be there because of how repetitive this was. So while I enjoyed sexy firefighter, brother's best friend, older, younger woman, single dad too, love single dads, this installment was not the follow-up, was not nearly as strong of an installment in the series that I was hoping for, which is why I rated it 2 out of 5 stars. Okay, so once I was done reading that, I was simultaneously listening to The Longing of Lone Wolves, written by Lana Peherchek. I think that's how you're supposed to say her last name. This is a fantasy romance novel, and it is book number 1 of the Fae Guardian series. I did some digging, and I think this series is going to be like 7 or 8 books. Quite a long series. Or maybe 9. The way that it's formatted maybe makes me think that it's going to be a 9-book series. It had a really cool concept. I would say that if you are a fan of Sarah J. Maas, I could see how this book and this series might be interesting to you. But I had just like a tepid experience with it. It was very, like, middle of the road. So I'm not saying, like, run out, you absolutely have to read this one. But if you're interested in fae romances, if you're interested in fated mates, if you're interested in, like, kind of an urban fantasy, but also fae fantasy concept, this could be a really good one for you. Our main heroine, she wakes up, and she wakes up in a world that is not like the world that she fell asleep in. She doesn't remember falling asleep. She has no idea where she is. When she wakes up, she is, like, set upon by these, like, creatures that she doesn't quite know what they are. They're kind of human, but they're acting very, territorial, they're acting very animalistic, and she doesn't really know what's up. While she's being, like, harassed by this group of people or this group of creatures, she sees one man kind of, like, off by himself, and she's looking at him. She's like, hello, can you help me? Because he's not a part of this main group that's harassing her, but he's not doing anything either. She's like, hello, can you help me? It turns out she's the only one who can see him. Once he realizes that she can see him, he strikes up a deal with her, and he's like, all right, fine, I'll help you as long as you'll be my eyes, as long as you'll be, like, my voice. I want you to do something for me, and I need you to talk for me because nobody else can see or hear me. So she strikes a deal, and he kind of helps her out. So that's the setup. The main thing that we find out is our main heroine, she has woken up in this world that is actually the United States, but, like, a futuristic, but gone back to, like, a primitive era. Does that make sense? The world that she left, the United States was going through some type of, like, apocalyptic event. So it's not really the United States that we know of. She made her way to Las Vegas, and she has this gift that has helped her, like, scam a bunch of the casinos. And the casinos were really profitable because in this apocalyptic kind of situation that we found ourselves in, of course the casinos would be really profitable and a place where people go. And so she basically scams the tables so that way she can have money to live. Something cataclysmic happens to Las Vegas, which is why she found herself asleep. She had been in this, like, magical frozen ice age sleep for, like, over 100 years, and she wakes up, and because this cataclysmic event happened, magic was able to make its way back into the world, which is why the Fae have taken over. So this group of fae very much is like wolf shifter fae. That's why I think this book series is going to be maybe 9, because there's like various different groups of fae within this world. There's like some that are really close to vampires and other mythical creatures like that. So this first book follows like the fae who are wolf shifters. And so her and our main character kind of go on an adventure to help him get what he wants and try and uncover this mystery of like, what has happened here? Why has this world that I thought I knew been destroyed, and these fey creatures are now like the main power? So it's a really interesting concept, and I think like if I'm bored and need something to listen to, I'll continue on with the next one. It's not one that I'm like chomping at the bit to be able to continue with, and there's so many that I'm not like in a rush to get through them, but it was interesting enough that I didn't have any complaints. Like I said, it was very middle of the road for me, and that's why I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. No complaints, but like nothing wrong with it. Nothing great about it either. So that's what Longing of Lone Wolves was. Then the next book that I read, this was on ebook. This was Steel King, written by Devney Perry. This is book number 1 of the Clifton Forge series, and the Clifton Forge group of people that was formerly a motorcycle club. So that's what brought me to Devney Perry, because I really wanted to read a motorcycle club romance, and this one was really interesting. So Clifton Forge is this town in Montana, rural town. And our main heroine, she used to be this like big hotshot reporter in the big city, and realized that life wasn't for her. So she wanted to come back to Clifton Forge, where her father now lives and runs the town newspaper. So of course she's gonna work for her father. Okay, Bryce is our heroine, and Dash, that's his name. Dash is our hero. So Dash is the son of the motorcycle club president, and he had been a member for forever. You know, basically like family was the one who founded the motorcycle club, and then they decided that they wanted out of that life and they shut their doors. Well, Dash's father has just been brought in accused of murder, and Bryce, you know, small town newspaper, she wants to write big stories, and she is not convinced that Dash's father is completely innocent. Dash comes in and he's like, no, I know my father. He did not commit this murder. So they strike up a deal. He wants to call Bryce off the scent, off of like publishing these horrible stories about his father, and he'd be willing to help her and work with her so that way they can uncover who really did. And unlikely, you know, enemies to lovers kinds of situations, small town romance, motorcycle club. Those are the kinds of things that I've really been enjoying with like my contemporary style romances. So I ended up giving this book 4 out of 5 stars. Truly did enjoy my time with it. And I do already have the second book, which is called Riven Knight, on my Kindle Unlimited, and who knows when I'll pick that up, but I do plan on continuing with this series pretty quickly. Maybe what I'll do is I'll finish Tattered and Torn and then jump in. I don't know. We'll see what ends up becoming of that. Since we're talking about Tattered and Torn, let's talk about Hidden Waters. This is book number 3 of the Tattered and Torn series, written by Catherine Cowles, and I had a much better time with this one. I ended up giving this book 4 out of 5 stars. We are still following the main family of the young girl who was kidnapped. This time, it's another older brother. Love that. And then we are now kind of bringing our focus back on this prepper community. So book number 1 was the young girl whose father kidnapped everyone, and this is her cousin. At the end of book 1, her cousin realized that, you know, her cousin is offering her a way out to live in the town of Wolf Gap and no longer be in this kind of like abusive scenario with this community on the fringe. But her transition to the outside world has been very, very slow going. She's now been outside of the community for about a year. So this is Addie is our heroine, and then Beckett is our main hero, brother of this whole family. Beckett has since returned to Wolf Gap because of the events of Falling Embers at the end of that causes Beckett to come home. He's actually a doctor. He has been doing kind of like the Doctors Without Borders program And he has been dealing with his emotional grief and trauma from the night of their sister's kidnapping by basically escaping and getting out of town. He wants nothing to do with the town because like that just brings up too many bad memories for him. Well, at the end of book number 2, something happened and he decides that, you know what, my family does need me here. I'm just going to come back. And the town doctor in Wolf Gap is retiring, so he ends up purchasing the practice, and now he is going to be the practicing town doctor. Now, if you knew anything about me, I went to college when Grey's Anatomy was in its heyday. So I love me a town doctor, love me small town doctor vibes. Give me all of the doctor heroes, okay? I like, if you have recommendations, send them my way. So I instantly just like had this connection to Beckett, really enjoyed his character. Well, Beckett and Addie come together because Addie needs a roommate, Beckett needs a place to live because he wants out of the thumb of their overbearing mother. And so it's kind of like situations brought them together. And it was a very slow romance. It was very tender and caring, and basically like they're both kind of dealing with their trauma and wanting to be slow about it, and they find comfort in one another, and it was such a great romance, such a great installment. This was the follow-up to book number 1 that I was really hoping for, and that should have been the follow-up to book number 1. So I love Addie and Beckett. That restored my faith in the whole series, and so I haven't continued on with it. That was the last Catherine Cowles book that I read for the month of April, but I do plan on finishing the series since I only have 2 books left. When I read Hidden Waters, that was a big reading day for me. This was on a weekend, and I was just cranking through the books. Okay, book number 1 of the Salacious Players Club. This is Praise, written by Sarah Kate. This was honestly just a book that I picked up as a palate cleanser because I wanted something quick and dirty. And I got quick and dirty, and it was really fun. When I originally read it, my mind and feelings were wrapped up in it pretty tightly, and I gave it a 5 out of 5. But after some days went by, I reflected on it, and it really wasn't a 5-star read. So I bumped it down to a 4. There were a lot of things that I liked about this book, and this is a whole series that I do plan on reading more books in this series, because if you want something quick and dirty, I would barely call this a romance. I mean, there was a good plot line in here, but this was more erotica than some of the other books that I have read. Whew, okay. Let's start at the beginning. Emerson Grant is his name. He is an older gentleman. I don't know if they like specifically said his age range, but he's probably like 40s. I'm going to say like a generous mid to late 40s. He is working in a very high-powered career, and he has a group of friends, and they love to commiserate over happy hour, and in their commiserations while they're drinking, they end up talking about, like, the things that they enjoy sexually. And what they enjoy happens to be things that most people don't really enjoy. Or I shouldn't say most people. Most people find it taboo to talk about. So this was like more of like a forbidden romance. I wouldn't call this taboo because this was like very sex positive. It's a sex positive book for sure. But they talk about the kinds of kinks and fantasies and BDSM scenarios that they really enjoy. They've decided, you know what, we really hate our jobs, but we're also like really good at our jobs. So let's quit our company and make our own. And so the Salacious Players Club was formed. The Salacious Players Club is a very highly sex-positive sex club where basically it's a place to be free to explore your fantasies, explore your kinks. Everything is clean in a clean, safe environment. And Emerson Grant is one of the founders, plus his friends. So they're very wealthy from this go around, because there's a lot of people out there who want to do those kinds of things. They want to explore their sexuality in a safe environment, and a judgment-free zone. So that's what I really love about this book, is just like, they're like, why can't we do what we want to do in a safe way? Let's make it so it's possible. So where we meet our heroine, this is an ex-boyfriend's dad romance, which, ooh, I love. I didn't know I loved that until this book. Our main female heroine, Charlie, that's her name, she breaks up with her boyfriend and she's trying to get her security deposit back for the apartment. So this is like the setup of the book. And Charlie's ex-boyfriend, he's like, literally, I don't have the money. You're going to have to go to my dad and get the security deposit. She's like, why can't you go to your dad? He's like, because I don't talk to him. She doesn't know why he doesn't talk to his dad. The Salacious Players Club is the reason why he doesn't talk to his dad. So she's like, fine. So she goes to Emerson's house to collect this security deposit, her half of the security deposit. When she goes there, Emerson mistakes her for a young lady that he's expecting for this BDSM play that he has set up for himself. And Charlie kind of goes along with it until Emerson's dad realizes she's not who he's expecting. He has made a terrible faux pas, and he basically like gives her the rent check and he's like, I am so sorry, please forget this ever happened. But Charlie decides she doesn't want to forget this happened. What she's experiencing now that she's a newly single woman and what Emerson has to offer, she is really intrigued by it. So this is a story of a young girl kind of exploring the bounds of her sexuality and exploring the bounds of what she's interested in through a safe environment like the Salacious Players Club, and it's her romance with ex-boyfriend's dad. So great. So if you liked any of those things, Age Gap, turns out I really enjoy that. I read another taboo romance, like Taboo Forbidden Romance, in the month. This was more like my steam, because what's so wrong about a boyfriend's or an ex-boyfriend's dad? Because it's ex, right? Like, okay, maybe not the best move to go after the dad, but I don't find that to be as taboo as other topics are. So I feel like if I read taboo romances that are more along this kind of line, then I'll really enjoy them. So once again, I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. All right, then the next book that I read happened to be the first of many historical romances that I finished in the month of April. This like really started something in me. So I had read all of these contemporary romance books, and then I just kind of like veered into historical, and that kind of like consumed my mind and my brain. So the first book that I read in the historical romance ended up being The Making of a Highlander, written by Elisa Braden. This is book number 1 of the Midnight in Scotland series, and I really, really loved it. This was a 5 out of 5 star read, and I can't wait to continue on with this series. This follows Annie. I knew that. Mad Annie is what they call her, and John Huxley. Okay, so I loved this book because it takes the like fierce, fiery Scots men, turns it on its head because it's a Scots woman this time. Mad Annie is our heroine, and she is our Highlander. John Huxley is an English lord who he has come upon some property. Don't want to get too much into it, but he has now kind of inherited this property in the Highlands, and he is an English lord and doesn't really want to be there. He goes toe-to-toe with Annie's stepfather. That's a big plot point. He goes toe-to-toe with Annie's stepfather all the time because they're kind of arguing over this property. Annie's stepfather, it's bordering his property line. He wants to acquire it to make his property bigger, and John Huxley refuses to give in to any of his offers. They go back and forth so much that Mad Annie decides, she's like, you know what, this is ridiculous. You know what, the Highland Games are coming. My stepfather and my stepbrothers, no one can beat them. If you can beat them at an event of your choosing in the Highland Games, we'll let you keep your property. We'll go with whatever deal you propose. And they end up going along with it. That ends up being like a really great solution for everybody. Well, then it's their romance. It was a hero falls first, class differences. I'm going to put this book down because it's shiny, so sorry. Class differences, cultural differences, basically, with the Highlander aspect, and I loved it so much. There is so much to enjoy about Annie as well. They call her Mad Annie because her best friend is a ghost. And so it brings in this like whole subplot of like Annie's connection to the Highlands, because to her best friend, she knows he's a spirit, but that doesn't make her any less of someone who's important to her. And so we have like the old Highland lady who is scorned for just being the one who like kind of gives out little tokens and potions and stuff. And she, befriends her. And John Huxley refusing to accept any part of the Highlands, but she wins him over. And it was amazing. It was so good. 5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed that. Can't wait to continue on with that series. All right. I finished those 3 books in one single day. By the way, the next one. I don't know what book we're on. This is The Pans of Mourning, written by Brandon Sanderson, book number 3 of Mistborn Era 2. So yes, I continued on with my reading and listening of this whole series, and I'm now one step closer to being able to continue on with Stormlight because I only have one more book left to complete in Mistborn Era 2. So this one, we're still on like our steampunk era. Basically, Wax and the crew have to go out of town to continue on their investigations of the set. And this one, I was reminded very heavily of The Adventures of Korra, like basically Avatar Era 2. This one made me think completely of the Legends of Korra, how everybody is now having to live up with the legends of Mistborn Era 1. We have new technologies that are really kind of scary and getting in the way of these traditional powers. And the cool thing was, like, this plot line really followed along with the fact that not everybody can be Mistborn, and not everybody is satisfied with the goings-on in Elendil. And so that's why they're holding on to their new technology so much, because it gives a more level playing field for the people who just weren't inherently born with this power. So we really explore that. We explore a wonderful romance. That was so surprising. That was just like a wonderful treat in this book. The romance between Wax and Steris really, it's not a forefront of this book, but it was just like a wonderful addition to the plot that was a surprisingly delightful kind of little subplot in this book. So much fun. And like I said, book number 2 was reminding me of Batman with our Bruce Wayne character, and now Pans of Mourning reminded me of The Legends of Korra. I then continued on with my historical romance reads, and this is a brand new trilogy to me. This is She Tempts the Duke, written by Lorraine Heath. This is book number 1 of the Lost Lords of Pembroke trilogy, and I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. Now we are getting into all of these 5-star reads. I had so many 5-star reads in the book, or in the month of April, and this was like the Kickstarter to just a slew of 5-star reads. So I ended up picking up Lorraine Heath. This was a recommendation from Jess from Peace Love Books, because she was talking about, like, if you like these kinds of heroes that are more anti-hero, then Lorraine Heath is your gal. And I was like, anti-hero, sign me up. So this one, oh God, I loved it so much. It had so many of my favorite tropes. And I already filmed a video talking about one of my favorite romance tropes that this book has. And I will be posting that video probably next week. But the trope that it has that I absolutely love, childhood best friends to lovers. So this had that. It had a great family, not just found family, but like a great sibling dynamic, which is a weakness of mine as well. And betrayal, anti-heroes, seedy kinds of activities that we need to do to get our way. I loved it. Okay, so this book follows Sebastian, who is the oldest son of the Duke of Keswick. Him and his brothers, he has 2 younger brothers, Tristan and Rafe, and Tristan is his twin. That plays a big part of this as well. They grew up in a happy home. Their mother did die in childbirth with their youngest brother, Rafe, but their father loved them, cared for them, and always instilled this like sense of duty in Sebastian. Well, one day their father goes out for a ride with their uncle, and their father falls from his horse, and the brothers suspect that the uncle ended up murdering their father during this horseback ride. So the uncle comes back. He's ready to take charge of the boys. He ends up locking them in a tower because he is plotting to take over the dukedom, but he has these 3 young lords in the way, so he's trying to kill them. They have a best friend at the estate next to theirs. Her name is Mary. She overhears the plot and she ends up going up to the tower, unlocking the door, thereby rescuing them, saving their lives from this horrible misfortune. Well, the boys decide, all right, our uncle is out for us. He wants the dukedom, but we're only there. The twins were 14 at the time, and then their youngest brother was 11. So they're like, we're not old enough to deal with this. Like, we need to flee for our lives and we need to split up because we don't want our uncle to take over the dukedom. So if we're split up, there's a better chance that at least one of us will be able to survive and take the mantle from father. They have to do a lot of difficult things. In the way that they were split up was very heartbreaking and tragic. There's like just a very, very tragic backstory for all of these young men, and they're ready to come back to society and claim their rightful spot. And we run into Mary once again. So there was so much here that I absolutely loved. I even said this in the live show that I just did on Ashley from Follow Through Fiction's channel. We just did the live show for book number 2 of the... Wow, I'm forgetting so many books. Book number 2 of the First Law trilogy. I said there that I had been reading a lot of historical romance novels, and this one would be for like, if you are a fantasy reader and you want to try some historical romance, this one would be a good one to try, because I said this is kind of like if the Starks got a happy ending, because there's like family plot lines and betrayals and all kinds of things. I really loved it. All right, then the second to last book that I want to talk about today ended up being like a newfound favorite of mine. And I originally read it on Kindle Unlimited, but I loved it so much that I had to buy the physical copy. So I am talking about The Words, written by Ashley Jade. This is a standalone, but there's like a spin-off kind of series, but this is a standalone. This is a rock star romance. This is a very strong enemies to lovers, but like they have a childhood past as well. So there's like a lot in here that I absolutely love. Very, very dark. Lots of dark content in here. So our main hero is Phoenix and our main heroine is Lennon. Lennon is a young girl in high school. She's like 17 or 18, and she is bullied pretty heavily because she's a little bit heavier set. And she has a very adoring father. Her father is like this famous songwriter. And so she's going to be successful no matter what. She just has to make it through high school. And then we have Phoenix, who is supreme bad boy of their high school. He has just like a really crazy bad boy reputation, but he is a really talented musician, and he just wants to GTFO and graduate from high school so that way he can go and make his rock star dreams come true. He's not doing so hot in some of his classes, and his teachers are like, we need you to pass these classes so that way you can graduate. Like, your graduation is on the line here. So the teacher sets Lennon up with Phoenix to be able to tutor him, to help him pass one of these classes so that he can graduate. The teachers are on his side. They're not trying to hold him back because they know that Phoenix has a really terrible home life, and it would be in Phoenix's best interest to get out of there too. We're covering a pretty big span of time because we get a lot of time with Phoenix and Lennon while they're still in high school and building up that first initial trust. There is a betrayal plot line in here that leads them into the fact that they hate each other when they are adults. Phoenix, does end up making it big, and I don't want to say the reason why he made it big, but that is a big point of contention between Phoenix and Lennon. Now, Phoenix is given into like every indulgence, and he's very much like on a downward spiral with the substance abuse and the sex abuse and everything like that. Not sex abuse. He's just like a sex addict. And his management is like, we've had enough. We need to finish this tour. We need you to clean your act up. And basically, Phoenix has slept with every single sober companion that he's had and has ruined all of those relationships, so they're trying to find a brand new sober companion for him. Well, one of his best friends was part of their band in high school, and he's like, I actually know someone who literally hates his guts more than, like, anyone. She will have no problem telling him what to do. And so that's how they are brought back together as adults. And gosh, it was super tension-filled. This was another very, very... so much steam. Like, if I have to like put chili peppers for how much steam you're going to get, right? My historical romances, they're at like a level 3. They're kind of medium mild. This was like a 5. There's a lot in this book, and it was wonderful. It was so good. It was so good. Second chance, redemption, the power of love. Ugh. So good. Okay, and then my very last book that I want to talk about today. This ended up being not a great book for me. Not a great book for me. What did I end up rating it? I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. So this is something that I read on ebook, and this is Lessons in Corruption, book number 1 of the Fallen Men's MC series, written by Gianna Darling. Now, I was recommended the Fallen Men series because like I've been really looking for some interesting and fun motorcycle romance books. And I had seen Gianna Darling's name come out, and a lot of people end up liking some of her dark stuff. So I was like, okay. I had no idea what I was getting into, and that this is in fact a taboo romance, which wasn't what I was in the mood for. So that had a lot to do with my rating of this. Our heroine's name is Cress, and our hero's name is King. Cress is in an emotionally stunted marriage, and she's not being abused, but she's not being treated well either. And she realizes one day that she like absolutely doesn't love her husband. She got married very young. It was kind of like the family set it up. It was really good for the family connections and the name and the money and the prestige that he brings. But she spots this like Adonis across this grocery store parking lot who is completely anti everything that she's ever known. He's got a motorcycle. He's just way too attractive for words. And that's kind of like what sparks in her like, wow, I'm like really not even attracted to my husband. I really don't want anything to do with him. I'm very young and I don't want my life to be the way that it's been planned out for me. So she ends up getting a divorce. And she moves away, moves to a brand new town, sets herself up. She's an English teacher. And turns out this Adonis that she saw in the parking lot is her student. She sees this guy who's King. She sees him out in a bar before she gets to her teaching assignment. So she does have this like really intense, sexually charged interaction with him. So she's already like super attracted to him. So the attraction has been building up before she realizes that he's still 18 and he's her new student. All right. So this is where my feelings break off. And I, of course, like, I know that taboo romance is like meant to explore different things. And like, I read a lot of like murder mysteries. I don't condone murder. So I'm not saying I condone student-teacher relationships either. But like, for those of you who don't know, I work in education. So there's like a part of my brain that like is screaming out loud about this whole situation. And like, I can't turn that off. I really can't. I can't sit back and for the enjoyment of things read about student-teacher romances. I think that's just like one topic that I really, really won't approach. So that makes it hard because like I know that the second book of the Fallen Men series is something that people really enjoy and they're like, you're going to love this one. So I'm like, do I continue with Fallen Men series now that we've got the student-teacher romance out of the way? I almost DNF'd this book too, but like I was reading it so fast because it's not a very long book to read that I was like, well, I might as well finish it. Like, I'm really close to the end, but I almost DNF'd it several times. And I like King as a character. I actually really didn't like Cress. I thought she was kind of like whatever. And I like the motorcycle club too. There's going to be this like plot line in here that makes things pretty interesting with like rival MCs, which makes me intrigued. And if anyone has read this series, like, let me know what you think. Like, should I continue going on? Because like I said, now that we got the student-teacher romance out of the way, which I would never read again, I don't think they're going to have 2 student-teacher plot lines in the same series, right? So I can continue on with the motorcycle club aspect of it. I'm not sure. Let me know. I know Gianna Darling writes a lot of taboo romances, so maybe I should have done a little bit more research into Gianna Darling before starting this one, but it's all right. Still gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Wow. Okay. Once again, thank you so much for joining me today. If you have made it this far, thank you so much. I know this is still going to be a long video because this is still the end of part 1 and we have part 2 still to film, and I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to get to film that today. I don't know how long it's going to take me. But anyways, if you have made it this far, let's go ahead and put a microphone emoji in the comment section below for Phoenix from the words by Ashley Jade. And let me know about any of the books that you saw me read in the first half of April. If you've read any of them, what are your thoughts? Or if you're intrigued by any of the titles that I have just mentioned. Follow me on my social media if you would like. I'm on Twitter and Instagram. It's at whatcassread, the same as this channel, so it should be super easy for you to find. And then, of course, you know how these videos end. I'll talk to you later. Bye.